Hello and welcome to the Wooden Ball Show. I am your host, Dave Ball, also known as Blinston on Reddit and at Blinston1 on Twitter. Like always, I'm joined by my partner in crime here, Blake Wood, who is known as at ChatMyKirk on Twitter and user BTownBomb on Reddit. And today we are joined by our resident Kings fan here, known as Dave Gove. He's LA Kings Dave on Reddit and at LWOS Dave Gove on Twitter. How y'all doing today?
Hello.
Hello, hello. The LWOS is for Last Word on Sports. As we must also mention, Dave is a writer for Last Word on Sports. What exactly do you write about there, Dave?
They have me contributing to their fantasy hockey, so I'm not necessarily writing about hockey in general, but mostly just fantasy hockey.
Mm-hmm. And kind of like the know-how of how to do it, and just kind of some pointers, some tips.
Yeah, pretty much. And I just started at the start of this season, and obviously the season hasn't started yet, so pretty much I've written a couple columns about drafting in general, what to look for, obviously for injured players or just sleepers and things like that. But going forward as the season goes, it'll progress a little bit, and we'll see how that goes, but pretty much it'll be a weekly thing, and then I might end up doing some other writing for them as well as far as hockey stuff goes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, we're not exactly here to talk about fantasy hockey. We're here to talk about the 2014 Stanley Cup champion Los Angeles Kings. But
I heard that they won the championship.
I'm not quite sure if they did. I'm not quite sure.
but before we dive into the team overview for this week, we do have some big news coming from the transaction world. Both of these big stories involving the New York Islanders. Since I don't have the info in front of me, if Dave can kind of fill us in on what happened today.
Well, the Islanders acquired both Letty and Boychuk. Letty from the Kings, the Blackhawks, and Boychuk from the Bruins. For Letty, they traded a defenseman, Podka. I don't know how to say that. Defenseman T.J. Brennan, and then the rights to goaltender Anders Nielsen. For Boychuk, they traded 3 draft picks: a 2015 second, a 2016 second, and a conditional 2015 third round. And if that condition is met for the third round, then the Islanders do not have a pick in the first 3 rounds of 2015, which is supposed to be a very deep draft.
I find that amazing because they knew that this was going to be the McDavid and Eichel draft, and just the fact that they would, I don't know. I mean, Garth Snow has never been the greatest GM, but it just amazes me that somebody would give up that much when they know what kind of draft this is going to be. So, I don't know.
Yeah, that amazes me too, but it makes me happy because they're in my division, and I want them to see them be bad.
Yes, it makes me happy because Chicago, they broke the cardinal rule, and that is that you should never mess with a defense of a cup contender. Now, they were kind of put in that position because of the cap hit, but still, I'm looking forward to this, and I'm looking forward to all these Chicago fans and their tears.
That's fun. So I guess with that covered,
Do you think that these are upgrades?
oh, for the Islanders, yeah,
Most
these are
assuredly,
very
yeah.
good second pairing defensemen for them. Their defense is very weak, and it got better with this. Definitely, they have a chance to actually contend for a playoff spot now, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Well, I think that they already had a chance to compete, but obviously their defense was pretty weak, so good for them. I really like John Tavares and Okposo.
Yeah, they're very good together, and I enjoy watching them too. As long as they're not scoring against my team, I'm very much enjoy watching them.
Mm-hmm.
So, all
I
right.
think that you're gonna. It's gonna be hard to do, but I think that Tavares might end up competing for the Art Ross.
He has a chance to if he can stay healthy.
Yep, that's their biggest that's their top priority now that they kind of have defense squared away now, I guess. They just gotta hope that Okposo and Tavares can stay healthy. You'll know that they'll continue to be the top players on the team, but whether they remain healthy through the whole season, that remains to be seen.
Do the Islanders have much depth outside of them two on their team? Do you guys know?
Not quite.
I don't think they do. So they could make a run for the playoffs, but not do much noise inside of it, really.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So.
But if Dave is ready here, we will now move into our segment concerning the
I'm just
Los Angeles
following your lead,
Kings.
so
Oh.
whatever you want to do.
Okay, well, we're going to jump right into this now, and first we'll begin with the season in review. For starters, just kind of talk about how the regular season went.
Well, last season, obviously, we finished third in the division, so it didn't go as well as we would have liked. Sharks and Ducks, I mean, California in general has great hockey right now, so it is difficult. The Ducks won the division, and we kind of just plugged our way through, and we knew that we were good enough to make the playoffs, but it's frustrating to watch a team during the regular season when you know they have more potential than what they're showing. So I would say, though, that part of that was because Quick was injured. So even though Scrivens and Martin Jones both played pretty well in goal, filling in for him, it would be nice if you always have your starters for the entire season. So aside from that, we didn't really have that many injuries last year. A lot of people felt that Dustin Brown might not have been 100%, but I mean, he had the worst season of his career. But just in general, though, our team's never had a great offense to begin with. And Jeff Carter didn't produce like we were hoping last year. He was hurt for a little bit, but at the same time, you expect him to be a 30-goal scorer. And that didn't happen last year. So obviously you guys know the rest. I mean, we lost the first 3 games in the playoffs against the Sharks, and then we came back and won 4 in a row. And then we went to Game 7 against the Ducks, went to Game 7 against Chicago, and eventually we beat New York in the finals.
Yeah, let's kind of dive more into detail on the postseason there. In recent history, at least, that was probably one of the best postseason performances I have ever witnessed. You guys come back from elimination, or the brink of elimination, I should say, against San Jose, and you win 4 straight there. Through the first 4 games, at least, in the next series against Anaheim, the home ice advantage was essentially non-existent. The road teams got the wins there. You go in, then you do beat the Kings, or pardon me, you do beat the Ducks in 7.
Well, what was even more? Yeah, I mean, we won all 3 Game 7s on the road too. So
yes, and that was another thing I was going to touch on there. So many Game 7s, a lot of people begin to wonder if elongating these playoff series would eventually prove to be fatal for the Kings wherever they would end up finishing.
Well, I think that with the Kings, like I said, we didn't really have a ton of injuries last season. So luckily we were fairly healthy, which obviously helps a lot. But also we just tend to grind people down because we're bigger than most teams. So we can outplay them physically. And over the course of a 7-game series, that obviously helps a lot. Obviously, there's 2 series within California as well. So you didn't have a lot of travel. So while 7-game series can be tiring when you don't have to travel that far, especially, I mean, Anaheim and Los Angeles are 30 miles apart, so that's not even flying. And I don't know. I just think that there was a lot of factors like that where it was just an anomaly. I think that the Kings also played more games ever than any Stanley Cup winner, if I remember correctly. Because obviously nobody had ever played 3-7 games in a row. And so it's just a matter of, I think that we just wear people down.
Alrighty, and now we'll move on into the next area of the season in review, and that is the unit breakdown, where we'll kind of go over the Kings' offense, defense, goaltending, and coaching staff. You'll kind of give your thoughts on how they performed this season, and then at the end you'll just grade them on their performance.
From last season?
Yes. And we'll, the season and the regular season, the postseason, the whole thing there. And we'll begin first with the offense. Probably, or quite possibly, one of the top offensive performers from the get-go is Anze Kopitar. But his offensive output, from what it looked to me, got so much greater when, in the trade deadline, the Kings acquired Marian Gaborik. They kind of they clicked real well, and this season is also where a lot of NHL fans were made aware of the insane offensive depth that the Kings possess. Just kind of go more into detail on the Kings offense from last year.
Well, obviously our offense struggled, like I said. I think we were 28th or something in offense last year as far as goals scored. Obviously we were the #1 defensive team. But I think it's just the style that we play. It's kind of hard. We don't have a breakout style. And we also had the worst... We've had, over the course of the last 3 years, since we've won our 2 cups, the worst shooting percentage in the league. So that plays a big part. I don't know what it is exactly about our team not being able to shoot well, but our shooting percentage last year was, I think, less than 7, or right around 7. And Marian Gaborik, though, had a great shooting percentage. So when he came in, obviously Anze Kopitar is pretty good at passing the puck, a lot better than shooting the puck. So once you get a guy that can shoot the puck like Gaborik, then you see a lot of improvement in the goal scoring for our team. And also, at the beginning of the year, we didn't have Tanner Pearson up on the second line with Jeff Carter and Tyler Toffoli. Toffoli was with us for the season last year, but he was struggling as a rookie to really find his niche. And eventually, at the beginning of the year also, Mike Richards was centering a line with Jeff Carter. And Mike Richards really struggled last season, and eventually Jeff Carter ended up being the second line center, centering Toffoli and Pearson when Pearson got called up from the minors. And that line clicked. It's what we call that 70s line because all 3 players are numbered in the 70s. So once those guys all started clicking, and once Gaborik started clicking with Kopitar, you saw a big improvement, and our offense was #1 in the playoffs. So it just drastic improvement there, and we're hoping that that carries over to this season, and that 70s line continues to click, and that Kopitar and Gaborik, hopefully, I mean, Gaborik's already a little dinged up, and that's the biggest concern with him always, is that he's injury prone. I think somebody said that he hadn't played a complete season in like 8 years. Like he's been hurt at least for part of every season for the last 8 years, which is terrible. So we're hoping that obviously that doesn't happen again this year. We're hoping Dustin Brown looks like he's lost some weight. He's in better shape in the offseason. Mike Richards claims that he's lost some weight and is looking better this preseason, although I really have my doubts about Richards. I wish we would have bought him out. We still could have bought out a player at the end of last year, and a lot of Kings fans wanted it to be Richards because of his performance, and he just cost us so much. But if he can perform like the Mike Richards of old, then great. Otherwise, I think that was a waste, and that we should have bought him out. So,
Alrighty.
Sure.
Okay, and how would you grade the Kings offense, their performance from the previous season?
An F.
Hmm.
I mean, when you're hanging out with Buffalo at the bottom of the standings as far as offense goes, why not? I mean, I really. I know they won the Stanley Cup, but when your offense is the second worst in the league, I mean, there's no reason not to grade them an F.
Alrighty.
Now,
And
that obviously that's last regular season. During the playoffs, our offense was an A.
yeah. Well, just kind of a combined regular season and postseason grade.
Well, it was such a drastic such contrast between preseason or regular season and playoffs. I mean, if you want to grade them together, obviously, then maybe it'd be like a C, I guess, because they were able to pull it together. But yeah, just regular season F, playoffs an A.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and now we'll move behind the blue line and discuss the Kings defense, which, as you mentioned, was one of, if not the top, defensive units in the league. You have Drew Doughty. You start out with Doughty, and just kind of start out with Drew Doughty there, and
obviously
go from there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the strength of our defense is strength of our team is defense. Doughty is one of the most complete defensemen in the league. He might not have the offensive numbers to win a Norris, but he does so many things so well, offensively and defensively, that you have to put him up there as one of the top 3 defensemen probably in the league, if not, top 2. I think personally, I think him and Shea Weber are the top 2 defensemen in the league. Obviously, I might be a little biased, but as far as complete package, you have other guys that are really good offensively, like Carlson or Subban, but the thing is, Doughty is also extremely competitive and raises his game at the right times, which is hard to, get a player to do that all the time. You get sometimes guys with a ton of skill that just don't, it's so frustrating to watch them because they screw up so much. We have Jake Muzzin who's pairing with Doughty on that line, and there's so many times that you're like, wow, Muzzin looks really good, and then he'll just do something boneheaded, and you're like, God damn it. So that pairing obviously was one of the best. I mean, if you're into fancy stats, I think it was the best defensive pairing for Corsi last year. So that helped a lot. And then obviously when you're talking about defense, not allowing the team to generate shots is huge. 5-on-5. Our secondary line last year was Willie Mitchell, who's pretty much the only guy gone from our team that mattered. We lost Colin Fraser too, but he was in the minors and nobody really cares. But Willie Mitchell was there, and he's a defensive defenseman. He was paired with Slava Voinov, and Voinov is solid. He's a good skater. He's solid, but he's not that physical. So Willie Mitchell was more of a defensive defenseman, big guy, and we lost him, so that's gonna hurt. But we got, I would say, our third line defense wasn't necessarily that great. We had Matt Green and Alec Martinez, and Alec Martinez turned it on in the playoffs. But during the regular season, I wouldn't necessarily say that he was spectacular. He really, his shooting percentage was absurd last year. I think his shooting percentage was one of the highest for defensemen, which is weird because, like I said, our whole team struggled defensive or just shooting percentage last year. But his shooting percentage was like 13% last year as a defenseman. But aside from his offensive contributions, I wouldn't necessarily say Martinez is the greatest defensive player. I think that we're going to miss Willie Mitchell because we're going to have a rookie filling in for him this year. But overall, obviously, I think our defense in both regular season and playoffs, you got to give an A, seeing as we had the best defense and it helped our goaltenders end up winning the Jennings Trophy last year. So, I mean, goaltending helps as well, but I would say last year was way more about our defense than our goaltending. Even though a couple of our goaltenders played well, I wouldn't necessarily say that their save percentage for our goaltenders was the greatest. So it was more, I think, a matter of our defense playing great.
Alrighty, and that gives us a segue into the Kings goaltending breakdown. Now, when you think Kings goaltending, the first name that comes to mind should be Jonathan Quick. But while he was sidelined with an injury, there was a couple of other faces that made their names known during that time. One of them would be Ben Scrivens, who in the end was traded away to Edmonton. But in the other would be Martin Jones. But just kind of give us a breakdown on those three guys there.
Well, Quick was okay. Honestly, he didn't have a great season save percentage-wise. With our defense playing solid, he was continuing to get wins and he would have some good games and things like that. But I wouldn't say that it. I mean, it obviously wasn't his best season ever, and he didn't have his best postseason either. Evidently, he was struggling with a wrist injury, but I don't know that was necessarily the root of all of his problems. I know he's a very emotional goaltender. So sometimes things just get into his head, and that can cause him to be thrown off of his game a little bit. And I'm hoping that maybe, because he has all the physical abilities, he's one of the most athletic goaltenders in the league, if not the most athletic. So that's never been a concern. It's mostly just he just has bad games. You're like, why? Like he just lets in soft goals at times, and it's like something doesn't always click in his head because his body should be able to stop pucks with how athletic he is and how quick he is. I didn't mean to use quick. I wasn't quick, but that happened. As far as Ben Scrivens was not that great before he came to the Kings, and he said that our goaltending coach, Bill Ranford, who is a former NHL goalie as well, and our goaltending consultant, off the top of my head, I can't remember his name, really helped him switch up how he played goalie, which helped him have a career year last year as far as save percentage and just in general playing a lot better. And then even once he left us, you saw him get that 59 save shutout against the Sharks, which was incredible. That was one of the best performances I've ever seen by a goalie. So it's nice to see something like that happen for a guy who's obviously not going to end up being the starter because Quick signed that long contract. So I was happy for Scrivens that he got to go to a place where he can potentially be the starter. I know that they brought in Fast, but I don't think Fast is going to take over Scrivens' position in Edmonton. But when we did trade him, brought up Martin Jones, who had played well in the AHL, and then continued to play well for us, filling in for Quick when Quick was still banged up. And to be honest, it's hard for me to say much about a rookie goalie because it's a very limited sample size. but when he did play, he played really well. So that's obviously encouraging to see. But I don't necessarily know. I'm waiting to see how he does this season, especially if something happens to Quick again, and he has to take control of the team. Because even when Quick was hurt and he was backing up Scrivens, he still had a veteran presence there. Obviously, Scrivens got traded after Quick was coming back, and I'm just if he's a full-time goalie or if something happens quick, I would be scared still because I don't know that I can still trust him 100%. But he's definitely played well, and that's an encouraging sign. As far as our goaltending goes last season, I would give us like a B. I don't think that we were able. Which sounds terrible since we won the Jennings, but like I said, I really felt like it was more our defense helping our goaltenders win the Jennings than our goaltenders winning the Jennings on their own.
Alrighty, and now to conclude this portion of the season in review, as well as the season in review itself, let us now discuss head coach Daryl Sutter and the Kings coaching staff.
Obviously, Sutter's system works great for the playoffs, but this is the third year in a row where our regular season hasn't been as good as it could be. So it makes me wonder. I'm a little concerned that at some point it's going to fall off. Like that in some way, like you can't have players step up every year in the playoffs. Like you can't just for some reason the Kings can turn it on and turn it off. And that's great. But you just like to see more consistency. As far as our assistant coaches go, I didn't really think that our special teams was that great this year. So I wouldn't. I don't know. Obviously, we won the cup, and it's hard to criticize a coaching staff that leads you to that. But I definitely think that we could improve our power play. Our power play was terrible last year. So I think Davis Payne, who used to be the coach over in St. Louis, right, Blake?
He sounds familiar, yeah.
Yeah. I just haven't been that impressed with him. I mean, obviously our defensive coaching has been great, but I don't really know how to critique a coaching staff because I've never been a coach myself, and all I do is see the end result, and the end result is we won a Stanley Cup. So I'll give them an A because they've set up a system that works for the playoffs, and it's worked 2 of the last 3 years. Even if it frustrates me during the regular season at times because it gets in a result, and that's all that you care about.
Alrighty, and that concludes the season in review. Now we'll sort of segue into the off season, but more specifically, we'll talk about transactions and all these transactions that this is the time period in between the previous trade deadline during the season and then moving into the off season and talking about the free agency period. And that starts again with Marian Gaborik, so just kind of go over again the Marian Gaborik trade, and then move on into the off season, and we'll talk about the free agency additions and subtractions.
Sure. Well, obviously at the trade deadline, we made a move. We shipped out Matt Fratton, and we got Marian Gaborik in exchange, and that's about all it took. I mean, we didn't really make a lot of moves. We didn't make a lot of moves this offseason. We didn't make a lot of moves last season. I mean, we have a solid team, so there wasn't really much. Gaborik was huge, though. as you mentioned earlier, I mean, Gabrick just turned it on for us. His shooting percentage and just his big game presence against the Ducks, especially, was huge for us. So, um, but we didn't have anybody else really that we picked up. So I don't really have it as far as our transactions go last season. We shipped out Dan Carcillo. He was doing nothing for us. There weren't really any big name. Um, I'm trying to think. As far as I know, there wasn't any other big name stuff going on. So
I'll give you a lifeline for this part and tell you the Kings did pick up Adam Cracknell, formerly of the St. Louis Blues, in free agency.
oh, sorry, I thought you were talking
Yes.
about last season.
Oh no.
Oh, yeah.
This is the off season here in the free
Okay.
agency.
Yeah. Well, we got Cracknell. We did in this off season. We also traded for Braden McNabb from Buffalo. So that's the guy that's supposed to be replacing Willie Mitchell. And we're hoping that he's going to be that guy because we don't really have anybody else on our defensive side that's going to help him out.
Alrighty. And
As far as Cracknell goes, I have only watched him play this preseason. I don't know much about him beyond that. And as far as I know, he's still up with the team. He has not been cut yet from the main roster as of yesterday. So that might have changed today, and I haven't seen it. But I don't know that he's gonna make the team in the end. I think he's just gonna end up going back to the AHL.
I will tell you about Cracknell from his time in St. Louis.
Sure.
I always felt that the kid can be very, very talented. He just hadn't unleashed all that talent yet. I'm guessing, maybe he'll just need the right system, the right coaching system, the right supporting cast to allow him to unleash all that talent. And unfortunately, I just don't see that happening in Los Angeles per se, because as you said, he'd probably just be shipped to the AHL there, and he's already been in the AHL. He's been with Peoria. He's been with Chicago. He's a very good player in the AHL, but I still feel he does have that talent within him to make it in the NHL. He just hadn't used it yet.
Well, that's good to hear. I mean, obviously, I would love it if he did, and it was a good acquisition for us. But yeah, I don't really know if maybe he can crack our fourth line right now. But our top three lines are pretty set, and obviously, unless something happens due to injury, I know Andy Andronoff or whatever is probably first in line for us as far as forwards go to crack our lineup. And then maybe it would be Cracknell after that. But like I said, it was a good sign that Cracknell hasn't been sent back down yet. So if he continues to produce we only have one more game left in the preseason, but that's the Vegas game coming up here against Colorado. If he does well in that, maybe he'll stay on the practice squad, and we'll see what happens. But yeah, the Kings were not big movers during the offseason. We really didn't do anything besides sign Gabrick to a really good deal.
I kind of think that's to be expected from a team that just won the Cup.
Yeah, I mean, this is a credit to Dean Lombardi though, because he's done a really, really good job of not having. He only has, I think Mike Richards or Jeff Carter the only people on the team that have a no trade or even like no movement clause of any type at all. And he set everything up for our system really well, and he's done a great job as GM in signing really good contracts that help you build a team where like the Gabbard deal is probably longer than we really want, but it's at a low cost per year. And that's what really matters, especially with the salary cap, because we're right up against the salary cap, as you would imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And if it goes up next year, we should be okay. But for now, that's the only thing that's concerning a little bit is if something happens or somebody gets hurt and we need to make a move for somebody, we don't really have a lot of cap space.
Alrighty, now we'll talk about the other thing that occurred in the off season, and that is the NHL entry draft in Philadelphia. Now, with winning the Cup, the Kings didn't get a very good draft position, but kind of talk about what the Kings did do in the draft.
Well, yeah, like you said, I mean, we had the 30th pick overall, actually 29th, I'm sorry, because New Jersey went in, what was it? New Jersey got the last pick in the draft because originally they weren't supposed to have a pick at all, but due to them petitioning the league, they ended up getting the 30th overall pick. So we got the 29th, and we got this guy, Adrian Kempe. I'm not entirely sure how you pronounce his name because he's Swedish, but everyone says that he looks strong. He's a big guy. He's like 6'1", 6'2", 290, 190. 290 would be 290 would be Dustin Byfuglien. But yeah, no, he played in Modo last year in Sweden, and everybody says he looks good. But I mean, you never really know, and especially since last year or this year's draft was so weak. There was really only a couple guys that you were going to say, oh, they're going to crack the lineup right away. And he's definitely not one of those guys. But I think going beyond that, what we wanted to see is depth down the center in our minor league system. Because even though the Kings have really good centers with Stoll and Kopitar and Richards and Carter and all that, we don't have a lot of great centers coming up, and we didn't really address that problem in the draft, which was a concern for some Kings fans, because we drafted a defenseman in the second round, and then we got a center in the third, but by the time you get to the third round, especially if a weak draft like this year, you're really just hoping one of these guys magically pans out, because at this point, the odds of anybody cracking an NHL team after the third round are ridiculous. So it really wasn't that much of an inspired draft, but like you said, what are you going to do? We had all 7 picks, or I believe we had picks, 1 pick in every round, so at least we didn't lose any picks, and at least, we can hope that those guys do end up working out. But we didn't really make any moves during the draft, and we didn't really do a whole lot other than just pick last every round. So.
Alrighty, and now we move on into the look ahead into the upcoming regular season. For the Pacific Division standings, at least, there's still that triumvirate, the big three-headed monster of the California teams to contend with. Just kind of talk about how you feel the Pacific Division would look like, and how you would see the Kings fitting in there.
Well, obviously the Ducks have won the division the last 2 years. I think that they only got better in the offseason. They brought in Kessler, obviously, and their goaltending is still kind of a question mark. Jonas Hiller was terrible at the end of last year, which is why he didn't even play in the postseason. And he got shipped off, or he left in free agency for the Flames. So now they have Gibson and Anderson, and that, I think, is their only thing that's weak. And I think that you still look at the Ducks to maybe be the favorite to win the division because the Ducks are a great regular season team. And I think they had the second best offense last year. So the Kings, just for whatever reason, just don't put it together during the regular season. And as much as I would love to predict that the Kings are going to win the division because we've only won one ever in '91, I don't think it's going to happen unless we stay healthy and our power play does much better than last season. Because, like I said, the last 3 years we've had the lowest shooting percentage in the league, and I don't, even with Gaborik, unless a couple other people start putting the puck in the net during the regular season on a consistent basis, I don't see us being offensively, there's not enough offensive talent on our team to consistently put up those games, or even in shootouts. Our shootouts are not great. If we win a shootout, a lot of times it's because our goalies are good. It's not because we have great guys in the shootout. Kopitar's good in a shootout, but aside from him, we really don't have many guys that are great in shootouts, and so you're losing points there a lot of the time too. And I think that we're better than the Sharks are this year, even though the Sharks are better than us last year. So I think that we're going to end up finishing second in the division. And we'll probably be somewhere around 4. Well, I guess it doesn't matter with divisional playoff now.
Mhm.
But if we don't win the division, I think we're finishing second. I don't have a lot of faith in our regular season based on the last few years.
Alrighty. And for the upcoming trade deadline, would you see the Kings being buyers or sellers?
As of now, neither, unless Brady McNabb doesn't work out, or Brandon. If we need a defenseman, maybe we'll go after somebody. But we just don't have the cap space. There's nothing we can do. So, as of now, I don't really see how we can do anything at the deadline. No.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty. Now, to conclude the team overview, we'll head into our miscellaneous questions. And the first question would be, who you would see would be the team's top goal and point scorer for the upcoming season?
Kopitar will be first in points, but I think Jeff Carter's going to lead us in goals again. I think that Gaborik has the ability to, but I just don't guarantee that he'll be healthy all year. So I think that Carter will end up with, because Carter, if that 70s line keeps producing, there's our second line. If they keep producing like they were last year, I think he will lead in goal scoring. Because I think he has the ability to get 30 to 40 goals. I think Gaborik does too, but I just don't see him staying healthy all year.
Alrighty. Now, in terms of talent, as well as in terms of the intangibles that they would bring to the team, and this could be anyone on the roster too. Who would you see would be the top overall player for the upcoming season?
Top overall. Well, obviously most people will say Kopitar is always going to be your top overall, but I think it's time to see Doughty be that person. If Doughty wants to win a Norris and if Doughty wants to be the best defenseman, he needs to be our best player as well all year long, not just during the playoffs. But I think it's going to be Kopitar again. I think Kopitar is generally going to be our best player almost every year.
Alrighty, and the final question, my partner in crime's favorite question here. Let us say that everything that can go wrong does go wrong in the the very big and extensive Los Angeles Kings media and the fan base. Did you notice the sarcasm I was using in that?
No, not at all. Thanks,
Oh.
Blake.
But they're
So if everything I mean, all right. Well, worst case scenario obviously is everybody gets hurt. So
Mhm.
I mean, we've had Quick get hurt already. Quick got hurt last season. Quick's been hurt before in other seasons. Our goaltending and defense bail him out for the most part as far as that goes. Obviously, as long as he's healthy in the playoffs, that's great. Kopitar was hurt at the end of the season in 2010, and we looked really bad in the playoffs against the Sharks for the most part that year when he broke his ankle. When Doughty's out, that is our biggest concern.
Mhm.
He gets more ice time than anybody else. If anybody is going to get hurt and it affect us the most, because we have depth at center now. We didn't when Kopitar got hurt a few years ago, but if Kopitar gets hurt, we have depth at center. If Quick gets hurt, our defense and backup goaltending has always been okay. If Doughty gets hurt, we're hosed. So Doughty is our most important player. I know that Kopitar is the biggest name on the team, but realistically, Doughty plays almost 30 minutes a game. Well, maybe he plays like 26, 27 a game, and he plays in all situations. And based on the fact that we are a defensive team, if your best defensive player gets hurt, that would be the worst case scenario. If that happens and he's not healthy for playoffs, I don't see us going that far. If other people are hurt, I don't think that we could beat somebody like the Ducks or Chicago. The Western Conference is too big. But I don't think that there's any way, even with multiple injuries this season, that we wouldn't make the playoffs. I think that unless it just went, like you said, catastrophically wrong and everybody got hurt. But as long as that doesn't happen, I still see us making the playoffs regardless.
Mm-hmm. And the question here being, if everything does go catastrophically wrong there, who would the fan base and the media, who would they be throwing under that proverbial bus? Who would be the public enemy number one?
Davis Payne. Not Davis Payne. Yeah, it is Davis Payne, right? I mean, you can't. When you win 2 cups in 3 years, it's hard to say that your coach is doing the wrong thing or your general manager. So, I just don't see us really throwing anybody under the bus, except they would fire the assistant coaches first, because we've already gone through different assistant coaches in the last 3 years since we won the cup, and then we won it again. And so most people don't feel that Daryl's the problem. They would feel that the assistant coaches would go first, and then after that, maybe him. But everybody has faith in Dean Lombardi and his system, and they feel that he's good at constructing a team. So even if we miss the playoffs this year by some random, everything going wrong chance, I don't think that Dean Lombardi would go.
Alrighty, and that concludes our team overview of the Los Angeles Kings. Thank you very much, Dave, for joining us this afternoon to discuss
no problem.
your
Thank you
team.
for having me.
Alrighty, and we are now entering
Did
the...
Blinson just leave, or what? I haven't heard him in like an hour.
No, I mute myself during this.
Oh. Were you just on mute the whole time and forgot?
Yeah, just to mute the entire time. No, I didn't say anything. So it's Blake
okay.
that does the interview. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Well, Dave, is there anything regarding the Kings that you personally would like to know?
No, I think you covered everything.
Alrighty. Well, okay, we are about to head into our closing script here. Once again, we'd like to thank Dave for joining us for discussing the Los Angeles Kings. You can find him on Reddit. His username there is LAKingsDave. You can find him on Twitter at LWOSDaveGove. Right? Is that what it is?
Yep.
Okay. And
I might just change that to LWOS LA Kings Dave. It's easier for people to.
Remember.
Yeah. Yeah. And Dave, just kind of give us a teaser now for next week's episode.
Next week we have our final week of this. It will be the New York Rangers and the New Jersey Devils.
Ooh, a rivalry week
Yes,
on the Wooden Ball podcast next week. And again, as Dave said, the conclusion of our team overview. Once we get all these out of the way, we'll be ready to start the regular season there. So be sure to tune in for that next week. The upcoming schedule, we're getting plenty of shows back, too. Be sure to tune in to the Puckin' Awesome podcast. That is Monday night, 9:30 Eastern time, I think it is.
Yes.
Yes. And the Toddler Wednesdays podcast, that will be on Wednesday. I forget the time on that one, though.
7:30.
7:30, that's Eastern?
Everything's in
Okay.
Eastern.
Okay, yeah, 7:30 Eastern time. Well, everything
And I
except...
think are we starting back up the D4 show or?
I haven't been able to get in contact with Abe, and Gambo hasn't gotten back to me either. So
Well,
I'm
it
not
might
sure
just
what's
be
really
the
going on with
D2
that.
show then.
Yeah,
D2.
basically.
D squared, yeah. And I believe we're also going to be getting KH Lockria back for some of your more info on what's going on in the Continental Hockey League there. Day and time for that will be determined at some point in time.
I think she's covering NCAA hockey too, right?
Ooh.
She hasn't really said what she's going to do. So
That'd be pretty good.
Because I would actually be more interested in that because I know that she's big into college hockey.
I know
too.
she is. Yeah.
Well, alrighty. For the Wooden Ball Show, I am Blake. You can find me on Twitter. My username there is @ShattonMyKirk. And you can find me on Reddit. My username there is BTownBomb. And for Dave, you can find him on Twitter. His username there is @Blinson1. And you can find him on Reddit. His username is Blinson. And for our HockeyCast, you can find us on Twitter. Our handle there is @OurHockeyCast. You can find our subreddit. Our subreddit address is OurHockeyCast, Our HockeyCast. You can look up the website, OurHockeyCast.com, to find to go through our archives and listen to previous episodes of the Wooden Ball Show, the Puckin' Awesome podcast, and all the other programming at Our HockeyCast. And you can do that same thing on our YouTube channel. Our name there is Our HockeyCast. Once again, next week, be sure to tune in. We conclude the team overview section with the New Jersey Devils and the New York Rangers. For Dave Ball, I am Blake Wood, signing off.
Have a good night, everybody.